Hey guys, Sterling here, and as always, I'm beyond excited to jump into this Bleach What If. So you saw the title, guys. Today we are discussing what if Ichigo didn't lose his Soul Reaper powers after defeating Aizen. And furthermore, what if Ichigo still had access to this incredible power going into the 1,000-year Blood War? How would Dongai and Mugetsu Ichigo fare in a battle against Yhwach and the Sternritter? And what kind of interactions would take place? And ultimately, how would this version of Ichigo being present affect the overall war? This is gearing up to be quite the exciting discussion, guys. So as always, slash that like button, slash the subscribe button for more awesome Bleach related videos. And as always, guys, if you have an idea for a Bleach What If, drop it in the comments below. I'm always interactive in the comments. I love talking Bleach with you guys. And if you have an idea for a great video, I'd love to make it happen. So with all that out of the way, guys, let's dive right into this What If. As much as I'd like to dive right into the Quincy invasion and how these forms of Ichigo would combat the Sternritter and Yhwach, I think if we did that, we'd be robbing ourselves of some incredible pre-setup, some incredible character interactions, and maybe even some lore building. So guys, I want to start this What If story shortly after the defeat of Sosuke Aizen. So as always, sit back and let me paint you a picture. Our story takes place just 24 hours after the defeat of the maniacal Sosuke Aizen. A recovering Ichigo Kurosaki lies in the back room of the Urahara Shoten, lost deep in an ocean of thought. So this is where our What If story begins, and this is what I meant by the pre-setup being very important, because I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably asking, like, Sterling, how did he keep his powers? Like in this story, how was Ichigo able to retain this incredible power? And that's kind of the fun part, because in a what if such as this, if Ichigo were to have retained his powers and he was recovering in the back of the Shoten, just like I explained, he'd be just as confused as you guys, you know? He'd be thinking to himself, like, I know what Zangetsu said to me. Like, I heard him loud and clear. If you use the final Getsugo Tensho, then you will lose your Soul Reaper powers for good. So yes, Ichigo would be confused as well. And I'm sure at some point, Kisuke would come, you know, the sliding door would open and Kisuke would come into the room, and we would probably get the explanation to how Ichigo was able to retain his powers from Kisuke. Now, this is the fun part, because you can kind of theorize or speculate on multiple ways Ichigo was able to retain his power. We did a What If kind of similar to this last year, and in that particular What If story, we had used Ichigo's full brain powers as the catalyst for like him losing his Soul Reaper power. So instead of like Zangetsu and the Hollow disappearing and him losing his Soul Reaper powers for good, in that What If, the catalyst for Ichigo keeping his powers was the full brain powers disappeared instead of his Soul Reaper powers. So he was able to move on and continue on with that extreme Mugetsu power. Anyways, I guess it really doesn't matter how Ichigo is able to retain his powers. I always like to give people as many answers as I can, but you can theorize in your own way. However you want to decide Ichigo kept his powers. In this What If, obviously, he does. And he's at Kisuke's place, and he's talking to Kisuke, and he's going to be like, Kisuke, like, I feel incredible. Like, this power coming from me. Like, I would imagine Ichigo would probably be back in his orange-haired form, not the Dongai form. I don't think his sword would still be attached to his arm. I think it would probably be in its Shikai state, probably in the corner of that room that he's in. Anyways, I think how his powers would work if he did retain them, like he would be able to call upon that Dongai form, and then if he needed even more power, he could call upon the Mugetsu form. So more or less, like, the Dongai form of Ichigo would be Ichigo's new Bankai form. And then furthermore, this Mugetsu form of Ichigo would be like a transcendent form that he could call upon if Dongai form wasn't able to beat the enemy that he was combating. The thing about Ichigo when he shows up to battle Aizen and fake Kurakura Town is he is in a transcendent level of power. He's easily one of the strongest beings in all of Bleach, and then like I said, he has a Mugetsu form that he can then access that was able to take out an Aizen, Hogyoku amped almost to the max, at least until he reaches the echelon of power that he has in the 1,000-Year Blood War. But this form of Ichigo is insanely strong. So he's going to be in the Shoten talking to Kisuke, and Kisuke's just going to look at Ichigo and be like, you know you can't stay here in the world of the living, right, Ichigo? And, Ichigo's going to be shocked, but he's going to know what Kisuke's saying is true. Because at this point, the power that Ichigo has is just too much for the world of the living. So Captain Kuraku came to the world of the living in the 1,000-Year Blood War to give Ichigo's friends soul tickets to visit Ichigo, just in case Ichigo came back from the Soul Palace too strong. Well, this would be the same case. This form of Ichigo would be so incredibly strong that he'd be forced to leave the world of the living. And that's where this what if gets incredibly fun. And like I said, the pre-setup is so important because this form of Ichigo would now be forced to have to move to the Soul Society and call that his new home. I'd even take it one step further and say that someone from the Soul Society would be sent to the world of the living to give Ichigo this message. And since Ichigo just saved all of Soul Society and the world of the living, I think Head Captain Yamamoto himself would come down and tell Ichigo, like, Ichigo, we know that you have helped us many times, but you must come with us immediately for the sake of the world of the living. Anyways, that was a terrible Yamamoto impression. But I imagine him and multiple captains would come down to the world of the living if Ichigo were to have to make the transition to the Soul Society. And they would almost act as escorts, but out of respect, it would be the most highest ranking captains, obviously, and Head Captain Yamamoto. Anyways, they would tell Ichigo, hey, you're gonna have to come with us and you're gonna have to call Soul Society home at this point. Now, I already bet a bunch of you are getting excited thinking Ichigo's gonna be a captain. And although that would be extremely cool, we are not gonna explore that in this what if. And I really don't think it's Ichigo's style to become a captain. I think if Ichigo had to go live in the Soul Society, he would probably be like, hey, thanks, it's an honor, I'd love to be a captain, but I would much rather live in the Rukongai. I've heard from my dad that I've got some distant cousins there, some distant family. I'd like to go live around there and get to know them better. If I'm going to be in a new world, pretty much, I'd like to at least be around some blood. So I think what Ichigo would do is he would move to the Rukongai, where he would sharpen his skills, where he would train, where he would refine these forms to the point where he would be even stronger than the Ichigo we see that battles Aizen. Now, I'm sure Ichigo is able to go back and visit his family from time to time for anyone that cares, but for the most part, he's been living in the Rukongai, getting to know the Shibas better, and training. Now, guys, I want to know down in the comments below, how strong do you think Ichigo would be at this point? He's been refining his skills, he's been training up his swordsmanship. Now, just real quick, in this what if, we're going to skip all the Fullbring stuff. So that means in the 2-year gap between the defeat of Aizen and the first invasion, Ichigo's been training. So like I said, he's been refining these new powers that he has. Tell me in the comments below, how strong do you think this Ichigo would be? Because it's going to be really important in the rest of this what if. Do you think it's stronger than Ichigo's true Bankai form at the end of the series? Anyways, I'll get into that later. But I want to know down in the comments below, how strong do you think this Ichigo would be before the first invasion starts? Speaking of invasion, it's going to be very beneficial to the Soul Society that this Ichigo in these incredibly strong forms are going to be in the Soul Society for the initial start of the invasion. That's going to be very beneficial to Soul Society. But anyways, before we actually get into how that first invasion would go, I want to touch on one more thing. Since Ichigo's been training for 2 years, he's been living out in the Rukongai, he's not going to be the only one training. He's going to need a training partner. And not just that, Ichigo being at this new transcendent level is going to push other captains to want to get stronger. So can you imagine if Ichigo's training with like Renji and Byakuya and whatnot, and somehow like, you know, through training with someone as strong as Ichigo is now, Renji's able to unlock like Soho Zabimaru, like his true realized Bankai, and Byakuya is able to refine his Bankai and make it as strong as we see it in his second battle against Asnot, where Rukia takes Asnot out, but Byakuya shows up to save her. Anyways, my point being is those two captains in this What If are probably going to be 3 to 4 times stronger than they were in the first invasion, and it's going to make things very interesting. And not just that, obviously we're going to have this incredibly strong Ichigo present in Soul Society as well. I guess I shouldn't say 3 to 4 times stronger, and I guess I can't even guarantee that Renji would be able to unlock his fully realized Bankai, but for this What If, we're going to go ahead and say that Renji's able to do that without Ichibe's help, and through constant battles with this transcendent Ichigo, all the captains are able to get quite a bit stronger than they normally were in the start of the first invasion. And one more tiny little tidbit is, what if since Ichigo calls Soul Society home and his friends Chad and Orihime are visiting so often that like maybe they talk Yamamoto into getting his arm healed? I mean, you know, they just pester him enough. I imagine Yamamoto would be like, no, I'm not doing it. Stop asking. But since like the whole reason is he didn't want to get humans involved in Soul Society's affairs, but since Ichigo would be a member of Soul Society at that point and like would have helped, you know, he's helped out the captains many times, then just maybe he could talk Orihime into, or not Orihime, but he could talk Yamamoto into letting Orihime heal his arm. That would be incredible to not only have stronger captains, but have a way stronger head captain with both of his arms. Woo-wee. In my opinion, at this point, since Ichigo's been living in Soul Society for 2 years, training, honing his skills, his spiritual awareness would be insane. He would be in touch with everything in Soul Society, and he could probably sense spiritual pressures to the point where he would know everything that's going on in Soul Society. So even before the first invasion, I think Ichigo would sense the 5 Quincy intruders that enter the first company barracks and attack Kasekibe. I mean, who knows? Maybe that poor guy doesn't even have to die. Maybe Ichigo senses that 5 weird spiritual pressures have just showed up in Head Captain Yamamoto's office, and he flash steps very quickly to the first division barracks and just decimates those 5 Quincy. I mean, yeah, or not, who knows? They somewhat were a Ron car too. But anyways, he decimates those 5 messengers. Now they still get the message of war across, but Ichigo's able to kind of show up and save the day a little bit more than what actually happened in the actual story. Anyways, I think that would be kind of cool. But anyways, like I said, Ichigo would be able to sense everything going on. So even when the war actually started, Ichigo would know right away, and he would come to defend Soul Society. Now, this is where the What If gets extremely fun, because we have a transcendent Ichigo ready to defend Soul Society from the maniacal Quincy in the first invasion. Now, just real quick, before the first invasion actually begins, I want to switch locations to the enemy compound of the Vandenreich, where we have Yhwach and Hashwolf addressing all the Sternritter before the war actually begins. Now, I think in this What If, this conversation would be very interesting, because he's going to address the Quincy a lot differently than how he did in the original story, because we're going to have a special threat in Ichigo Kurosaki that is going to, like, the Quincy Quincy are going to have to do some extra planning for Ichigo in this what if, because in the original story, Ichigo was one of the 5 potential war threats because of his potential. Now Ichigo's one of the 5 war potentials still, but it's because of his transcendent power and the ultimate threat that he poses to the Quincy in this first invasion. And really, the whole 5 war potential list, it'd be way more than 5, because you'd have to include a Renji and a Byakuya, who are so much stronger now going into this first invasion. And you'd also have to have a 2-armed Yamamoto on the war potential lists. So anyways, this dialogue between Yhwach and the Quincy would be so cool to hear, because he would be like, guys, these guys are like the original Gote 13. Like, they haven't gotten soft. These guys are strong. They've been training. And not just that, but they've got an Ichigo Kurosaki on their side that could literally wipe out almost all of you guys. You guys are all going to have to be on top of your game. Like, the Sternritter can't go in all cocky and whatnot, because they're facing a Gote 13 that, like I said, are a lot stronger than in the original story. Now, of course, the Quincy are still very powerful, and every Sternritter will still be outfitted with the Bankai Stealing Medallion, which will pose a huge problem for the captains in Soul Society. Now, it won't pose a problem for Ichigo, because obviously his Bankai cannot be stolen due to the hollow inside him, but even if it weren't for that, Ichigo's Bankai form is his Dangai form, and at this point, that form is extremely strong. Ichigo's sword molds to his arm when he enters this new Bankai form, per se, and the chain wraps around his arm. So even if Ichigo's Bankai could be stolen, at this point, there's no Sternritter that could handle this power. The only person that maybe could control this power would be Yhwach, but like I said, it can't be stolen either way. And Byakuya Kuchiki, now, he won't be able to use his Bankai because, yes, it will be stolen. But at this point, after training with Ichigo for so long, his Shikai is just as strong as his Bankai. So he can use his Shikai to combat most of the Sternritter. Now, with all that being said, this is where the first invasion actually begins. And if this what if couldn't get any funner, well, now it's about to. Hey guys, editing Sterling here, and I wanted to point something out that I forgot to point out in the training segment of this what if. Can you imagine if Kenpachi Zaraki was fighting Dangai Ichigo for 2 years training? Because we know that Kenpachi holds himself back mentally when he's fighting someone, but when he's training with someone like it's gonna be the happiest day of Kenpachi Zaraki's life every day. He's gonna wake up, hell, he might not even go to sleep. He's just gonna want to literally be fighting and battling with Dangai Ichigo for the entire 2 years that Ichigo's living in Soul Society. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out, because not only do we have a stronger Byakuya, a stronger Renji, a stronger head captain, but of course, and how could I forget, we would have a very strong Kenpachi Zaraki on our side as well. Much stronger than the Kenpachi Zaraki in the original story in the first invasion. So the invasion has begun, and the research and development department begin to detect multiple captain-level spiritual pressures all over the Serete. But they're not the only ones sensing the invasion happening. Ichigo obviously senses it right away. Now, guys, I want to know down in the comments below, who do you think senses the Quincy first? Dangai Ichigo after training for 2 years, or research and development's technology? I think it's kind of interesting to think about. And while we're on that note, do you think a Dangai Ichigo living in the Soul Society for 2+ years would have been able to sniff the Quincy out of the shadows? Like, would he have been like, man, something's just not right. I've been here for a year or two, and like I just sense something weird going on, and like so he goes down into the shadows and like combats the Quincy. Anyways, something also interesting to think about. Tell me in the comments below, what do you think about that? Anyways, like I said, the invasion has begun, and the captains begin to meet up with the Sternritter, and Dangai Ichigo is ready for war. He stands there strong, his sword merged with his arm, the chain running up his arm. He is ready to combat any Sternritter that comes his way. But just like I mentioned earlier, the Quincy and the Sternritter have been briefed on just how strong Dongai Ichigo truly is. And I would imagine Yhwach or Hashwolf would probably tell the Sternritter before the war, like, hey, if you guys are going to combat this kid, do not do it alone. If you try to combat Ichigo Kurosaki alone, you will be decimated. If you are to run into this guy, you must combat him in a group. Now, this is where this gets really fun. I would imagine Ichigo would be flash stepping around the battlefield, taking care of any soldat or like low-ranking Sternritter. So the Sternritter that Kenpachi Zaraki kills off screen, I imagine Ichigo would just handle those guys off screen as well. Anyways, we would have an Ichigo flying around the battlefield trying to handle things as much as he could until he was stopped by the first group of Quincy that would try to combat him. Now, I could see all the Bambis possibly teaming up and trying to take down Dongai Ichigo. And guys, let me tell you, if they were to attempt that, it doesn't matter if Bambietta has her explode or if Giselle has 100 different zombies. Dongai Ichigo is going to decimate every single Bambi very quickly. So the first casualty to the Sternritter, like I said, would be the Soldat, the lower tier Sternritter, and obviously first, the Bambis are getting wiped out. Yhwach somewhat smirks to himself as the Bambietta's powers flow back into him. He's surprised that there's casualties this soon in the invasion, but also he's ready for a Dongai Ichigo, so he sends the second wave, the second group of Sternritter to combat Ichigo. 3 pillars of Reishi jet from the sky right in front of Dongai Ichigo. Out of the Reishi pillars step BG9, Kangdu, and Basby. They are all ready to attempt to take Ichigo down, but to no avail. These Sternritter are very powerful and have very powerful shrifts, but Ichigo is just too fast and too strong. And just like the Bambis, in mere moments, Ichigo takes these 3 mid-tier Sternritter out. Now we switch back to Yhwach, where we have a Hashwolf giving Yhwach an update on the rest of the battles going on in the first invasion. He tells Yhwach, for the most part, our invasion has been very successful. It's Dongai Ichigo that's been holding us back. Meaning the other captains, yes, they've gotten stronger in training, but with the Bankai stealing medallions and the hack shrifts, those captains are still having a hard time in battle. Now Hashwolf does mention, wow, Kenpachi Zaraki is way stronger than we thought. We didn't realize he had a Shikai. So Kenpachi's causing havoc, of course, because it's Kenpachi. But for the most part, Hashwolf tells Yhwach, like, hey, the main trouble here in this first invasion has been Dongai Ichigo. He's knocking out Sternritter left and right. And Yhwach's going to tell Hashwolf, like, yes, my son, I had planned on this. This first invasion was more or less just to test this version of Ichigo. Now I'm really going to drop the hammer on him. Now, as soon as Yhwach says this, then now enters the Schutzstaffel. Yes, Yhwach has decided to bring the Schutzstaffel down in the first invasion to combat Dongai Ichigo. And now, guys, this is where things get extremely fun, because this form of Ichigo is very strong, but now in front of him stands the Schutzstaffel, and his first enemy steps forward, Gerard Valkyrie. Now, it's no mere coincidence that Gerard happens to be Ichigo's next opponent. Yhwach did this strategically. He wants to see how Ichigo fares against possibly one of his strongest Sternritter. And at first, this exchange between Gerard and Ichigo is very one-sided. Ichigo has taken out Gerard multiple times, but due to Gerard's insanely hacked shrift, he keeps getting stronger and bigger every time Ichigo cuts him down. And this may actually pose a problem for Dongai Ichigo. For yes, Dongai Ichigo is way stronger than Gerard and way faster as well, but Gerard just keeps regenerating stronger and stronger. And although Dongai Ichigo is transcendent and very strong, he's starting to bog down just slightly, having to combat this extremely strong Schutzstaffel member. At this point, Ichigo's going to be thinking to himself, like, man, like, I'm not scared of this guy destroying me, but how am I going to destroy him? All my other comrades are combating other Sternritter. I have to take care of this guy quickly. What do I do? Do I use that form? Do I use it again? I've only accessed it a few times, that once during Aizen and then just for moments during training. But should I access it now to destroy this incredibly large threat in front of me? I had been saving this form for when I battled their leader. I think Ichigo would ponder on the idea for a few while he still continued to combat Gerard, as Gerard just kept getting stronger and stronger. And I think Ichigo would see the Quincy cross in the middle of Gerard when he's reviving and think to himself, okay, if I destroy that cross, this guy's like a golem. If I destroy the cross, then he may not regenerate again. So ultimately, Ichigo's going to decide to use his ultimate Mugetsu form to try to take Gerard Valkyrie down. So Ichigo this would be so beautiful to see him transforming into the Mugetsu form like in the 1,000-Year Blood War, but he does it, and he unleashes that insane attack that he unleashes on Aizen, but this time towards Gerard Valkyrie, and it completely obliterates Gerard, completely obliterates the medallion inside of him, and he is completely gone. He's not going to regenerate anymore. In this what if, Ichigo actually destroys the medallion inside Gerard Valkyrie and defeats that member of the Schutzstaffel. We see an exhausted Ichigo revert back to his Dongai form. He has just released a mass amount of Ryatsu, and he is feeling the effects of it. And this was all part of Yhwach's plan. And like clockwork, he orders Askin to launch a gift Bereich completely around Ichigo. Now, up until now, the Sternritter's hack shrifts have not been a problem for Ichigo. His spiritual pressure is so much higher than theirs that he's been able to neg almost every shrift that he's encountered. But at this point, after releasing Mugetsu and releasing all this power, Ichigo's Ryatsu levels are down and he can no longer neg the shrift abilities. And in this case, Askin's able to begin to poison Ichigo. And at this point, Yhwach tells Askin, stop. I'd like to speak to my son. Poison him just enough to where he can still hear me. Yhwach would begin to speak, and he'd probably say something along these lines. He'd say, my son, you were very strong, stronger than all my Sternritter. Join my side. And of course, Ichigo would be like, dude, no way. Like, I came here to defeat you. I mean, Ichigo would be struggling at this point. He's poisoned, but he's not going to give up, obviously. And you may get the dialogue where Yhwach tells Hashwolf, like, all right, maybe we just poison him enough to where he's knocked out, and we'll take him back to the castle for deprogramming. But anyways, this form of Ichigo is still very formidable, and to everyone's surprise, he's able to get up and he's going to attack Yhwach at this point, and Hashwolf gets in the way and uses his balance shrift, and just like in the anime, Ichigo's sword, whether it's connected to his arm or not, shatters. Now, just like in the story, Yhwach and Hashwolf and the rest of the Sternritter escape into the shadows, and the first invasion ends. Now, I want to stop the video for just a second and clarify. This what if could have gone two different ways. I chose to put a spin on it and give Mugetsu and Dongai Ichigo some crisis in the first invasion, but it very well could have went a different direction. It all just depends on how strong you think this form of Ichigo is. He very well could have went in there and murked all the Sternritter and then came up to Yhwach and began to combat Yhwach, and Yhwach would probably have to open his eyes, thus absorbing his entire Sternritter army, and then he'd awaken the Almighty. Now, I think that version of Yhwach would beat Dongai and Mugetsu Ichigo. Now, that's a very controversial. Tell me in the comments below what you think. I just wanted to let you guys know that it could have went two different ways. I chose to put a spin on it and give Ichigo some crisis because I do think Gerard would be a good battle for this version of Ichigo. Anyways, it all just depends. It could have went a different way. Tell me in the comments below, how strong do you think this version of Ichigo is? Anyways, back to the story. So now this is kind of where we have to start fast forwarding things, or this video could be 2 hours long, but the first invasion has come to an end and Soul Society is still licking their wounds. Yes, the captains were much stronger because the presence of Dongai Ichigo, but the first invasion was still very devastating. Now in this what if, head captain Yamamoto is still alive, so that's a plus, but the Zero Division is still going to come down and take Ichigo back up for training. Now whether they take the other Soul Reaper, that's kind of irrelevant. I guess they can, they can't. But the main thing is that Ichigo still goes up because he needs his sword to be repaired. And so obviously the Soul Society would begin to prepare for the second invasion, and Ichigo would be up in the Royal Palace training and getting his sword repaired. Now at this point, how he learns like the origins of his mom and his Quincy power and all that could be different. Maybe he learns that up in the Royal Palace. But the main thing is that he's getting his sword repaired, and not just that, but he's learning the nature of his true Bankai. So at this point, we'd have an Ichigo training in the Royal Palace, more or less in his transcendent form, but with his Bankai fully realized, all his powers fully realized. This version of Ichigo is more than ready to combat Yhwach at this point. He is beyond strong, and the Soul Society actually has a very good chance heading into the second invasion because of how strong this Ichigo would be. For real, guys, think about it for a moment. Actually, the more I think about it, the more fan fiction-y this gets. But that's the fun of what ifs. And Ichigo keeping his powers after defeating Aizen would change so much. It would change the entire story. So I'm doing my best with this what if, trying to flesh everything out. But like I said, this video would be 3 or 4 hours if we were to do that. But the main point is that we've got a even more trained up Ichigo. I mean, at this point, he's reaching levels of power that are, other than Yhwach with the fully realized Almighty, we haven't seen anything, we wouldn't have seen anything like this, fully mastered Bankai, Mugetsu Dongai Ichigo, whatever you'd want to call it, this Ichigo would be insanely strong. Now in this what if, the second invasion looks totally different. All the events from the second invasion, the invasion of the Royal Palace, and the end of the actual story would be all kind of meshed together in this second invasion, at least in this what if, because everything would happen very quickly. Keep in mind, the head captain Yamamoto is still alive, so think of what kind of battles he could have in the second invasion. Now, due to me not wanting this video to be 2 to 3 hours long, we can't touch on every character and how this form of Ichigo being around affects every single character. It's kind of just up to your imagination to start filling in the gaps at this point. But like I said, we could have a head captain Yamamoto fighting one of the Schutzstaffel like Pernida. Can you imagine his Bankai up against Pernida, a piece of the Soul King? He could burn all Pernida's nerve endings. Anyways, I digress. What I'm getting at is this second invasion with this Ichigo present would be totally different. This form of Ichigo truly could solo any Sternritter, any of the Schutzstaffel. His only challenge at this point would be an almighty Yhwach. So in this story, you'd still have a beyond trained up Ichigo come down from the Royal Palace, busting a hole in the shield, thus allowing Yhwach, the Schutzstaffel, and the Sternritter entry into the Royal Palace. All those events could take place just like normal, but there would be some amazing fights taking place around this fully realized Dongai, whatever we're calling this Ichigo. Obviously, you'd have Kisuke still creating the Shinjin Yako. God, I slaughtered that. But anyways, the Bankai retrieving pill, all that would still happen. All the good stuff would still happen. It's just the fights would be different. It'd be beautiful to see. The invasion of the Royal Palace would still begin. But we'd just have an Ichigo that would be, like I said, he'd be able to handle anything that he came in contact with until the final battle with Yhwach. I don't think that there would be two separate final battles against Yhwach. I think there'd be one final battle with this insanely strong new form of Ichigo. He'd have Kuraku with him. He'd have Head Captain Yamamoto with him if they were all able to survive their fights. He'd have a very strong Kenpachi Zaraki with him. Anyways, I mean, we'd have to skew things for Head Captain Yamamoto to let Aizen out of the Mugen, but maybe Kuraku could talk him into it. Anyways, what I'm getting at is there'd be one final battle against Yhwach. Uryu would help, and they would probably end up winning the day a little bit easier. Who knows? That, I mean, depending on how you want to twist this what if and how far you want to use your imagination, this battle could go down in multiple different ways, but it'd be insanely fun, insanely beautiful to see. It really is all up to your imagination at this point. This entire video is up to your imagination. And you can see, if you're still here, you understand why this is so convoluted. Because just the nature of this form, like, it can't work moving forward in the story. There's a reason why, like, it's lost and then Ichigo has to regain it. Anyways, we all know the story. But it's still something so fun to talk about because this form of Ichigo is easily a fan favorite. And the community really is kind of split about how strong this form is. Like I've said a couple times, I am no power scaler. I'm a Bleach historian, a Bleach storyteller. So what I wanted to do with this video is kind of just flesh out the fights, kind of just have fun. Like I said, you really have to use your imagination, suspend your disbelief, but it's still a very fun topic to bring up. I really want to know what you guys think down in the comments because, like I said, there was so many angles where I ran into making this video where it's like, well, that can't work, but this can, and this. I had never actually even planned on diving into this what if or this story, but I've had so many people request it, specifically a long time friend of the channel, Egg Dog. This one was for you, brother. I tried my best, but like I said, with the nature of this form and like how Ryatsu works in Bleach, like, I mean, we don't even know if the Shrifts would work on this form of Ichigo. Like, we ultimately don't know, like, how, like, definitive how strong this form is. So like I said, I wasn't even going to touch this video, but because I didn't think there was a lot of substance there. And then the more I got to talk about it, the more excited I got, the more fun it got, all that pre-setup. What do you guys think about all that? Do you think if Ichigo did keep his powers, would he be banished to the Soul Society? Do you think events would kind of unfold how I said they would unfold, or do you think they would play out totally different? Ultimately, I want to hear from you guys in the comments below because that's why I make these videos. Like I said, this was a request from you guys. I'm always willing to make a what if that you guys request if it makes sense. This one, like I said, was a little bit off the rails, but I've had so many people request it and I figured it could be a lot of fun, so we dove right into it. I mean, how do you guys think this form of Ichigo would do against Gerard Valkyrie? Do you think it would kind of work how I said it would work? Anyways, guys, was a fun topic to talk about. The next what if won't be quite as off the rails, but I mean, that's what YouTubers are for. And like, that's what these videos are for, is to explore things that didn't happen in the actual story. So guys, don't forget to smash the like button, smash the subscribe button for more awesome Bleach related videos, JJK videos. We're building a community of people that love Bleach, love JJK, love collectibles, pretty much just love nerding out. And we're building a community where we can all just hang out, be friends, and talk our favorite things. Guys, these what if videos that I make are a complete labor of love. I do them for free, but the plan is, and the goal and the dream is to make these large scale and actually animate these what ifs. So we would get animated what if battles of our favorite Bleach characters. I have a background in animation. I could make it happen if these videos got a little bit of traction, if we got a few more eyes to the channel, because right now, like I said, I do this all for free out of love because I love Bleach, but the ultimate goal is to make these what ifs extremely fun for anyone that enjoys animation, Bleach, or just a good what if story in general. So guys, keep that in mind as the channel grows. Sometimes the editing isn't always going to be the best, but keep in mind that I have a daily life as well, but I like to come home and make these videos with you guys, discuss Bleach with you guys, because I truly just love the series that much. So anyways, guys, until the next video, I hope you all have a great weekend. This is Sterling signing out.